Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.
And welcome to Aquarian Radio, aquarianradio.com, and this is a simulcast with TJ Morris, ET Radio. And, of course, my co-host is Theresa J. Morris, and I'm Janet Carol Lessin, and we have a very special guest, Lynn Hartrum. And today is Experiencer Liberation Day, October 1st, 2015, here on the planet Earth. Are you an experiencer, abductee, or contactee of extraterrestrial or extradimensional intelligences? Tired of keeping low profile? Tired of the societal ridicule? On October 1st, 2015, the silence ends. You will be joined by other experiencers who will be coming out or already have that they are a part of a planet-wide phenomenon of peer-to-peer exposure towards Earth, becoming aware of its galactic neighbors. It's an all-day event, and various local online efforts will be forthcoming as people share their human experiences of contact. And there's a Facebook page, Experiencer Liberation Day. You look it up. And this event is sponsored by the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, also known as FREE, F-R-E-E. And there's a Facebook group at free.experiencers. So there's a lot more information on my website page on aquarianradio.com. And I'm going to pass the baton to Theresa J. Morris, who will do part 2 of the intro, and then we're going to bring on Lynn Hartrum. And we're going to hope my kid doesn't knock me off the air. Okay, take it away, TJ. Oh, wait 1 second, sorry. Okay, I hope it didn't screws up. I forgot when the show launches. So everybody's off mute. I forgot it does that. Okay, go ahead, TJ. Take it away.
Okay, am I live now? Can you hear me now, world? Okay, let's try that again. Hello, everyone. TJ Morris here, ET Radio and Cosmos Radio Organization. We're launching today on October 1st with Experiences Network and Free. And for those of you, you've known Janet Carol Lessin and myself since June of 2012 on the radio airwaves together. Prior to that, we've done television and radio, and we've done music and CDs and books and e-books. So we're all about content and research, and we have many groups together, including our Ascension Center organization, which many of you are part of, our Ace Folk Life organization. And Janet has Experiences Network built, as well as Lynn has been a part of Free, which is, Janet mentioned, Foundation Research for Extraterrestrial Encounters, and we all know and love the famous astronaut that we now call Dr. Edgar Mitchell. He has the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and we are honoring all experiencers tonight with Janet Carol Lessin, Lynn Hartrum, and myself. So we're all going to share our association together as experiencers and share our stories tonight. So Lynn Hartrum, I guess it's to you now. Would you like to tell us a little bit about you and Free?
Sure, I would love to. I'm Lynn Hartrum. I am the program director for Free's Peer Support Program. What we do is we have experiencers write into us and if they're looking for support, more one-on-one support, we have a whole group of volunteers, over 75 people, I think, at the last count, who are very well versed in their own experiences, have gotten, kind of used to the strange happenings that go along with it, and they're there to help someone else who, needs a little more understanding, support, encouragement, that type of thing. So that's the program that I run for free. There's also the research side of free, where we have a bunch of different studies going on right now, but we also have a survey that we've done with over 1,300, I want to say. I could be wrong on that number, but at least over 1,100 people have completed the survey, people who have had ET experiences or contact of some kind. So we're a busy bunch over at Free, and today is Experiencer Liberation Day, which we are super excited about.
Yay! And I thought it would be great for us to do, because this is the day where we're coming out of the closet, and I really encourage people that if it's possible to come out of the closet, call into the show and share your stories with us. You can decide to not use your real name, use a pseudonym, or use your real name, whatever serves your purposes. And we invite you to share your stories, because these stories are going to set all of humanity free. The experiencer stories are disclosure. I have no doubt. I've been having conversations with people about this over the years, and they think that the experiencer information is the most critical information coming forth, and it's happening today on Experiencer Liberation Day. So I thought we could ask each other questions, and since Lynn's our new guest here, the newest one of the three of us here on these shows, I'd like to invite you to ask the other two of us, Janet and TJ, some kind of question about our experiences. What are they? Whatever your question is, you ask us what it is, or what is this experiencer stuff? What are we talking about? So take it away, and then you're going to answer it at the very end. So be aware of that.
Okay. Janet, I'm definitely familiar with your experiences, and I do have a question for you about them. However, I would love to hear a little bit about TJ's experiences, because I don't know anything about them.
Wonderful. Well, we can each take a turn sharing. Are we going to share our full experience, or we're just going to touch on the basics of chronologically, Lynn? Since we've got 2 hours here, and some people, as you said, may know Janet's story and not mine, or those on my channel may know my story and not Janet's, but most people that know me know Janet's. But, I've had a lot of new people since we've both been running our own radio shows. So who would you like to go first, Janet or me or you? I don't know your experience, so... Lynn, you want to mention yours? Or Janet was just saying we could each share.
Yeah, TJ, why don't you start and go for about 15 minutes? I'll kind of give you a heads up, or you can look at the clock yourself. And, 10 to 15 minutes, because we do have 2 hours. And your story is so important today. I'd like to have this down on both sides and for the listeners. Go ahead, TJ, and start sharing your story first.
Okay, well, thank you, Lynn and Janet and everybody, all that know me. In our Alien ET UFO community, I've been writing for UFO Digest of Canada since August 2007, and I've, of course, talked to Stanton Friedman, and Janet and I started this show, TJ Morris ET Radio, with the blessings of Canada and the U.S., with both Dirk Vanderploeg, the late owner, publisher of UFO Digest. I'd like to remember him. And Stanton Friedman came on and launched this show with Janet and I in the Stargate to the Cosmos. Now, my story goes back to when I was born, and I had experienced roughly 3.5 or 4 years old, first memory of my family as me being in human form here and looking up and seeing my spaceship, and being in a field down from where we lived in Monroe, Louisiana, on South 7th Street, and my mother lost me, and she was tending to my sister. There was just me and then my young sister. So she called my grandmother to come and find me, and by the time my aunt, she didn't drive, so my aunt and uncle went and got my grandmother a few streets over on 3rd, and I was on 7th. And they came, and by that time, time had passed. I understand I was missing from around lunch to a panic mother around 1:45 or 2 till the sun almost going down. So I'd been gone a while. So I was taken, and when I came back, I was trying to explain this to my grandma. She came out, and I got up out of off the little field, and tried to tell her. She wanted to know where I'd been. That my mother, she was distraught. Where have you been? And your mother's been worried sick about you. And I pointed up. I was 3.5, 4 years old. I knew where I'd been, and I pointed up and told her, I was with my family and just pointing up. And I remember doing it it's very much a part of me. But she said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You were dreaming, blah blah blah." Because I don't know that she had ever had experience. We didn't talk about it, but that was the first experience I had in memory. But she told me not to say anything to my mother. She was already upset enough. I remember that with her pulling my hand, and she was never forceful, but she was pulling me back because my aunt and uncle, I still remember them in the front yard. So that was my first memory. So then I jump over to the 2nd grade of school when I have hepatitis. And they don't know how I got it, but I had an out-of-body experience then where I saw my first angels. Now, these weren't the type in physical form or in a spacecraft. If you can, in your mind's eye, follow the line here, that at that time I knew about a spacecraft in another family. Okay, then skip a few years over to the next incident. Now, these I'm just hitting on because my story is really long, to where I had hepatitis at St. Francis Hospital, and I was in the 2nd grade. It was the end of the 2nd grade, and they had to bring a machine up to do like a kidney dialysis machine, but they clean your blood, and I'm giving you the short version, and they cleaned my blood, and at that time I passed. I had been very sick and yellow, and, it was really at the end of my lifespan at 7 to 8. I don't know, 2nd grade, 7, 8, somewhere in there. And so I saw 2 angels, or we'll say essences or extraterrestrials, or anyway, not in physical form, but I could see their aura, or to me they were real, but they were at the top of the room, and that's a separate sighting. The first one's more physical, just like you or me in physical form, but in a spacecraft, and then the second time were more angelic, etheric, assuring me that I was going to be okay. And it was in a Catholic hospital. There was only one there, St. Francis Hospital in Monroe, Louisiana, where I happened to be born, 12/26/51. And so I saw 2 personages. They told me I'd be okay and my life would go on. And the nuns went and got the gentleman priest or whatever they were, and they sent it all up, and it took a few days, and they tried to send it over to the Pope. And it was a big deal in the Catholic Church or whatever. But finally they were going to take me and do some other things. Some others said just tell them they had wings or something. That was in order to keep me with my mother. And I did, and it worked, because they knew those were our artist renditions, and angels don't have wings. And we all know that, and you know that your history in the world religions. So that's how that went. And so the next time, which is interestingly enough, though, I then had an ESP connection with these beings. So what I call it anyway, I don't know what others will call that, but I recognized I could do that. So I willed myself, and a lot like Allie Clark in the movie called Taken, that Steven Spielberg did for television. And Allie Clark, if you remember the little girl. So I was about her age, and I went to White Sands, New Mexico. Now, that was the next year. I was 3rd grade going to 4th grade, and I willed the same grandmother and the same aunt and uncle. It was Uncle Rufus and Aunt Bella Henry, and my grandmother was Esther Bolton, and to will me, I got them to take me to see this UFO family, my other family, and I knew they'd be in White Sands, New Mexico. Don't ask me how you know these things. I guess it's ESP. So I don't know what else to call it. I didn't call it then that, ESP, but that's what we call it now in the alien ET UFO community. So I willed my grandmother and my aunt and uncle to take me over to White Sands, New Mexico. We went and visited Carlsbad Caverns and went under the ground, and they turned the lights out. I think it's the 6th mile in Carlsbad Caverns, and that was the story. And then I had some Indian relatives of Uncle Rufus that lived on the reservation there in White Sands area there in New Mexico. And I remember all the little Indian children, and some of them were my cousins, and by marriage, I believe. And then my other uncle worked at Los Alamos right there at White Sands, so we stayed with them. And when we stayed with them, and he worked at Los Alamos as a famous, person working on these UFOs, which I didn't know at the time. But it's sort of odd. I have all these synchronicities. But anyway, they took me to White Sands, and me and my two cousins, around 10 was the boy, I think, and the girl was 12 or 13. I met them for the first time, but we'd been together in the same home for a week, so you know how kids are. We got to know each other. Well, we went up on the white sand dunes, and the adults, the uncle and aunt and grandmother and aunt and uncle, Rufus and Aunt Bella, they all stayed down at the picnic tables. They were cement. We had a picnic there so they could do what I wanted to do. I wanted to do the white sands, which is exactly where they took me. And so on the top of the white sand dunes, we played on them all day. And then about again in the evening, they put the boy and the girl to sleep on the white sand, and the UFO family came back. And they landed down, and the other people down in the bottom of the white sand dunes and the picnic table on the highway didn't see them. I don't know why they didn't see them, but we were over 2 or 3. You know how kids are, and they knew we were okay. They'd been up playing with us and stuff, up and down, taking pictures. And but they had gone on down and were tired, as older people do. So I was playing with my cousins, and then when they flew over, I was with the ESP connection, and they put them to sleep, the boy and the girl, and I got to go down to the spacecraft. And then that's where I started my story about going on and seeing the ship and learning about things and seeing other people. It was like a classroom. It was like a holodeck, things like that. And so then I come back off, and it's like on the movie Taken, and, I know that I have another, I guess you'd say, father or uncle, I don't know how one would say that, but a male personage. And so that's that part. And then I go on and live my life here and marry a gentleman. I get involved with the government in 1967. I become an ambassador of goodwill with the Houston Spinnerets. I meet Sonny and Cher. I meet a lot of famous people and go to these huge balls and things and go to NASA. My husband works at NASA, and I get to go over and hear about the bogies or the UFOs, which was classified at the time. And my husband happened to work for Chris Kraft that ran NASA in Houston at Clear Lake. And Chris Kraft got him a job to keep him from going into the Vietnam War. That was 1968. And by 1969, a man walked on the moon. And we all lived down there, and we all knew all the astronauts. And they'd come through a bank I worked at and drive their gold Corvettes with bat wings. It was a lot of fun. Everybody knew everybody. And we went and saw, later on, 2001 Space Odyssey all together at the Windsor in the theater. But I knew that UFOs were real, but we weren't allowed to talk. Of course, I had my own family off planet, so I knew both sides. But it was still hush-hush, again, like it's a child with your grandmother. No, don't do that. Don't tell your grandmother. And then over there, when I was in White Sands, sort of jumping around, but at White Sands, I had told my grandmother and me and the nephew, because they said, what happened and where'd you go? And I said, well, why'd y'all go to sleep? Because I went down and got to meet some people, and they called it a flying saucer, I think. And I mentioned it, and they, my dad works on it. Tell him, Dad. And he about froze. He was driving the car. We were all together. And they were in the back seat with me. And, oh, my God, you'd think the world came to an end. And he got real angry and told them not to talk about that they knew that they're not supposed to talk to that. And I remember everybody, all the adults got really strange. They all got quiet, and I got chastised for talking about it again. Said, don't talk like that. You didn't. You were just dreaming or something. And the kids were whispering to me, like, no, we believe you because my dad does that. And he got on to them and told them to stop whispering and stuff, So that's how that went, part of my life. So I always knew it was there. And then I had proof of it again at NASA and around them. But, again, it was classified. You couldn't talk about that stuff back then. But we just didn't talk about it with people. And so I went through life that way, but I became an investigator. I had children. I had 4 daughters, and I died again. So have I used my time up? You want to stop there, Janet?
No, just go a little bit more, and then we're good, because you're on a roll. All
right. So January 27th, 1974. All right. I had another daughter. I had 4 daughters by this time, and I had placenta previa, and I die again. So now we've got a girl that she's a human on Earth, talking like, we don't know at this point as an adult, am I a walk-in, am I a hybrid, or what am I, and all that. So, I just know that this is who I am, and this is normal for me. So then I die again, and I lose all the blood in my body, and they said it's not possible, but you came close to dying, and my father had to give me blood, O positive, and they used all the blood that was there in the hospital. That was Sharpstown Hospital, and that was January 27th, 1974. My daughter remembers, even though she was a baby, she remembers dying as I did. And I left my body, and because they cut me open, it was 60/40, and the nurse screams, and the anesthesiologist says, doctor, we're losing her, but I can't give her any more. And he said, that's okay, she's gone, and we got to save the baby. And so he at this time I'm still in my body when he rips with a scalpel, opens up my stomach. So I've got the scar down at the bottom. It's a bikini stitch. It's way down there, and he pushes with his hand. I had 2 big purple hand bruises on my stomach where he pushed the baby out. But then when he pushes the baby out and she comes out, I hear a nurse scream, and that shocks me, because now I'm transferring from out of my body up above the ceiling. So now I'm watching the nurse. I hear her scream and look at her, and when I'm looking at her, that's when I rise up out of the top of my head and up to the top of the ceiling. And I'm watching her with the baby, and then I'm watching them take the baby over, and she won't cry, and I'm staying right there with her, cry, because the doctor, we can't get her breathing. It's like, we'll go over there, and they snuck her out. I don't know what it's called. They take this little thing and clean the stuff out of her throat and do all that, and finally get her breathing. She was born a blue baby, and she has a little bit of a tail on her, but it's sort of funny. But she's a little blue baby, and they clean her all out, and they finally get her breathing. And I'm staying there for 2 or 3 minutes, and they do her footprint. I stayed to the time that they get her cleaned up and sort of washed off and do her footprint. I remember seeing the ink, which is weird that they do all that right then, that they did it on the side of the room where they took her. And then after they're doing that, I realize something, my consciousness is like, I realize where I'm at. I'm not in my body, and I'm watching. And so I catch I'm conscious that I'm conscious, but I'm conscious that I'm not conscious in my body. So I'm like, and so then I look, and then I start going towards this beautiful white, you've seen it, luminescent type of fluorescent white. It's hard to describe. It's not anything we've ever really seen, but it looks sort of like it makes you feel like you're on an escalator, and it's like a chute in a tunnel, and you go in and you go shoom. It's like you can't hear, but you're thinking. You're thinking, you're who you are. And I went up towards the light and went shoom, and I remember going past all these stars and going on up and leaving and going up, and I remember hearing some voices, and I knew what was going on. So then I talk to these beings, and I say, please, I don't want to go yet, and I hear them talking and stuff. It was like in the background, but I knew I was going to another place, another universe, and so I didn't have time to think, who is this? I know it's not the people in the room because I left the room. I didn't have time to think about, but it felt like I was talking to God, okay, or whoever we believe in, the omnipotent, and listening. And I thought, well, okay, they can hear me, and because I can hear them. And can you hear me? Can you hear me? And the short version is I just asked them, I don't want to go. What will happen to my children? And then the escalator feeling stops, that zoom. I'd gone all the way up to leaving this universe, going to another universe is sort of the way I describe it. And there's a big pause, which seemed like forever, but it probably wasn't. But then it stops, and there's like a pause. And I said, the last thing was, well, what will happen to my children? I need to go back. And they said, if you return, you'll have more pain than you've ever had before. And I said, that's okay. I don't care. I want to go back. And they said, well, if you go back, then all children will have to be your children. And I was like, In my mind, I'm thinking, so I'm like, what? But I said, I don't care. I just remember going, I don't care, whatever. I just want to go back. I've got to go back. I've got to go back. So then the escalator return. I mean, it gets like, and it stops, and I go back down to earth and come back down in that same 45 degree or like a escalator in a mall, but it's way up off the planet, back in, and I hit my body, and they had to, like 12 inches off. They were shunk. They had to revive me 3 or 4 times, and then I stayed for like 6 weeks in the other room, and my mother stayed with me, and I'd die again, and they'd have to bring me back. It was off and on. I'd sit straight up. So that was pretty rough. So that was that experience. So as I go on in life, which we can go on, but I can tell the rest of it from there later because I'm sort of tired of talking, and to make it more interesting, let everybody tell their story. And but that's just part of it. But we'll stop there because that's another place where you're talking. Those are 3 different incidences as far as I'm concerned. And so when we go to this free stuff, we need to start separating all the various types. There's out-of-body, there's near-death experience, there's UFO sightings, there's speaking with entities, there's speaking with angels, there's speaking with extraterrestrials. And so I'm hoping that today we're going to launch all that with Lynn and Janet. So, Lynn, thank you for listening. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, John. Thank you, Jane, all our listeners. Janet, I can't talk anymore for right now, so please, you ladies, tell us your stories. I'll finish mine later.
Your turn.
My turn. Well, that would be a hard one to follow. So my story, well, nothing quite so dramatic, but mine also started when I was, as long as I could remember, really. I was much more in tune with, I guess, what we would refer to as the paranormal side of things. Always having spirits around me, talking with them, being able to sense energies, that type of thing. And so that was kind of always what I grew up with. I was used to it. That's kind of my norm. And I didn't really think anything past it. So I did have some very strange things would happen. Things would go missing and then turn up in a strange spot, or I'd wake up in weird positions, kind of like, upside down in my bed. One time I woke up standing in the middle of my bed, which is a crazy way to wake up, let me tell you. So, I kind of had all of those weird little things, but never really thought too much of it. I just thought, okay, well, maybe I'm quirky. Who knows? And then as I got older, they seemed to kind of progress a little bit and change. And the first real, I would say, ET experience that was just blatant was one that I remembered. I remembered it first as a dream, and it was just a scene that was stuck in my mind. And I was on this table of sorts, I think. I was laying down, so that was my perspective. And I could see these 2 little grays kind of peering up over me. I know a lot of people describe them as kind of emotionless. Some people say they might be robotic. Not these 2 little grays. They were very curious, almost childlike. So I had definitely had a fondness for them. And then behind them, there was a tall mantis being, and he was wearing this long kind of burgundy robe with gold accents on it. And I woke up, and I was sat up straight in my bed the second that I woke up, and I'm looking around almost expecting them to walk through the door. It was just that very, very vivid type of a dream. And I'm sitting there kind of waiting for them, and then I realized, what am I doing? And at that point, I didn't know anything really about, obviously I've always believed that ETs existed. That was never a question in my mind. I just look up at the night sky and say, okay, there's got to be more out there than just us. That's ridiculous to think, anything other than that. But I never really looked into it, and that wasn't anything that really interested me. But after that, it kind of got stuck in my head, that image of these 3 beings, and it just would not go away. So finally, after about 3 or 4 days of being kind of, bombarded with this image, I was like, let me just draw it out. Maybe if I get it out of my head, that'll help. And kind of from there on, it was just, I got the ET bug, I guess. And so I did a little research, started learning a little more, realized how the paranormal is very tied into these type of ET encounters or interdimensional encounters. And then I guess the next momentous thing after that was I also do Reiki. I'm a Reiki master. And during my first attunement, when I was at the school that I went to, we were practicing. We had been attuned, which means they kind of open you up to the energies for, the Reiki energies. So we were practicing on each other, and I was working on this woman. She was laying on the table, and I'm sitting there not really thinking about anything, and I kind of glanced up, and over in the corner there was this beautiful, I guess the best way to describe it would be a light being. Though I couldn't see the being itself, I could see an outline and then just brilliant white and gold light coming out from all over the outline, and that's how I could see the being itself. And I just started crying immediately. It was the strangest thing for me because I had never experienced anything like that. And in my head, I remember thinking, like, is this an angel or something? I mean, I'm not really religious, so trying to figure out what is this that I'm seeing? And so I did a little more research, and the closest thing that I could find to it would be what a lot of people have called a light being. And then I saw another one very similar to that in my home probably about 6 months after that. And it was kind of weird. The TV was turned off, but I was, just sitting in front of it reading or doing something. And for some reason I looked up, and it looked like this being was kind of, very kind of small coming out of the TV. And as it did, it would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And just this brilliant light. This time it had purples and blues and all kinds of crazy things. So I was just thinking okay, well, that's pretty cool too. Like I said, I grew up with paranormal stuff, so none of this stuff has fazed me in the slightest. And then one night I was driving home from my daughter's orchestra concert, and there was this really, really bright light, and it looked like a giant star, just really big, bigger than any of the other stars. And as I was driving, I had to go through about 3 different towns, left and right turns, just changing directions, but all the while this ball of light followed me and stayed. I was able to view it from outside the passenger window, the front passenger window. And so at one point I stopped and said, okay, something's definitely going on with this thing. So I took a picture of it with an infrared camera that I had, and then kind of went on my way because I had to get the kids home and put them to bed. And the next morning I was looking at it, and I took a bunch of pictures without even really looking too much at them, thinking, I'll just check on them later. And it was red with these blue, I guess spikes or rays would be the best way, kind of like, when kids draw a sun and they have the little rays, the kind of a pointy ray coming out from it. That's what it looked like. And I was like, okay, that's definitely not a star. That's different. And, looked up what was in the night sky, where I was at when I first saw it. Was anything there? Could it be a planet? Could it be just a strange star? Maybe I photographed it with this infrared camera and that's just how it looked. But there was nothing really there. The only thing that was close to it was Arcturus, which was the star. And I had never heard of Arcturus before, so I said, okay, well, that's really interesting, but I have stuff I need to do. And so I went on with my day, and at some point, probably about 3 or 4 hours later, I was kind of scrolling through YouTube videos because a lot of times, I'll go through everything I can find about anything ET related. And all of a sudden, this video pops up on my computer that says Traits of the Arcturian Soul. And I was kind of like, okay, well, that's a little odd that I'm seeing this name that I've never heard of before twice in about 3 or 4 hours. So I looked at it, and for some reason, and normally I wouldn't really pay much attention to something like that, but it really, really resonated with me. And I was kind of in one of those aha moments, oh, that makes so much sense. And I guess I should backtrack just a sec. While I was becoming a Reiki master, working towards that, I've always done a lot of meditation, energy work, that type of a thing. And so I was very, very in tune with that. And I always knew there was something missing, something I wasn't quite getting. And so let me just do a meditation. And it really, everything about those Arcturian traits just really, really resonated with me. And so I did a little more research and had also, before this, been able to connect with some of my concurrent lifetimes. I don't like to call them past lifetimes because I think they're all happening right now at the same time as this one. And over time, I've been able to connect with my Arcturian lifetime and, kind of discovered through meditation and everything that this was another one of my lifetimes. And so have gotten to the point where I am able to go into a deep, I don't know if you would call it a mystical meditation perhaps, where you do have that out-of-body experience, and I kind of go into that lifetime and see what it is like to be me as an Arcturian. So that's pretty cool. And then I guess the next big thing, I've also had reptilian experiences, which have all been really, really positive. I first saw a male reptilian and talked with him. He had these giant, almost dragon-like feet. That's the best way I can describe it. And he was huge, 8 feet, maybe 9 feet, really, really muscular, like a linebacker. And he had these, spikes kind of going down his back, almost like iguana spikes, not super hard, but very prominent. You could see them. And, so talking with him and saw him several times and kind of learned over time that I also had a reptilian lifetime or have a reptilian lifetime. And in that lifetime, he's my partner, and he's still around me in this lifetime as well, kind of watching over me. And then at some point, he brought 2 hybrid children that I have from this lifetime, 2 hybrid reptilian children. So I've also gotten to meet them and talk with them a little bit, but that's fairly new, I'd say, within the past 6 months or so. So we're still all kind of learning about each other. So that's probably, hopefully that made sense. I kind of jumped around a little bit, but that would be, I guess, a good basis for my experiences.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess it's
Miss Janet, your turn.
Yes. Okay, I want to kind of fast, summarize it and not go into great detail because I don't want to take up all the time. And I want to get back to you, TJ, and part 2 of your story as well. So doing a time check, I have 2:37, so we've been on for 37 minutes. Okay, so I'll go for about 10 minutes here. So I came in as a contactee experiencer. I'm aware of my connection to extraterrestrials. I'm in my crib. I'm conscious of it. I don't know what to do to integrate this experience with this human existence. So I'm in a conflict, and my mother doesn't know what to do with this child that's awake and conscious, and she thinks I'm a demon seed. And extraterrestrials are coming to me on an ongoing basis, nightly. And finally, and then when I was very young in the crib, I levitated, and my mother freaked out. So finally, at 18 months of age, the extraterrestrials came in and said, it's time to be human. So there was a loud thunder crack, and I screamed, and then I was not able to talk at the level I had done before. I was talking to my mother like an adult, which was freaking her out. And so I settled into being a human baby. And my mother calmed down a little bit. She didn't try to kill me like she wanted to do before. So next, I am in continual contact with the extraterrestrials still because they're watching over me. At one point, they're letting me know that I'm being protected, that there's a different faction, there's light and dark, and the dark faction, they don't want them to know that I'm here, and so I'm just having these visitations on an ongoing basis. I start getting confused about what's what because I get more and more integrated into being a human, and this memory lapse starts taking over because they need to have me not remember everything for my own protection. Called Lacune, and so, they did convey to me that they were protecting me, and that was part of the process. Where do I want to go next? So 4 years of age, before this total Lacune kind of comes in where I'm totally human, they have me up on the mothership and I see the multiple timelines and the future histories and the potentials of where we can go. And they go from mass destruction of the planet where it blows up into smithereens all the way up to utopian realities. And, of course, I liked one of the utopian ones. I didn't select the one that was totally utopia because I thought we wouldn't have enough to do. I definitely steered away from the wars and the mass destruction. I was crying. I loved humanity. I loved the earth. I love all the animals. I've always been in love with everything, and it was really hard to even witness those episodes. So finally I chose the third utopian one from the end, which would give us a lot to do, enough to do. And that's what part of existence is about, is coming in and being co-creators with Source and, being part of the process of growth and evolution of our own personal consciousness and the consciousness of our species. I came back to Earth. I was told that as they were leaving, this is all telepathic. There's a point where we're not using our mouths and languages. We're just using telepathic impressions. It's not even words when it's telepathic. It's concepts and an understanding, comprehension. So I knew not to tell my parents. They said I've come here to do something that's important for all of humankind, for the earth, that when the time is right, I would be made aware of what the rest of my mission is. And at this point, just to fast forward, I don't know the whole mission. There are still parts in the dark, but that's part of the journey of being human, is that if you knew everything, it wouldn't be worth doing. So there is some wiggle room within the experience that's kind of outlaid to you. Nothing's set in stone 100% with the future, and yet you have made a decision to go in a certain direction, and so I know I'm on course with doing this Experiencers Liberation Day. So I too had near-death experiences. My mother was still crazy and freaked out about this child that, I was definitely not a normal child, and so when I was about 4.5, going on 5, there was a neighbor, and anyway, I won't say what happened exactly, but I was dead and out of my body as a result of this neighbor who abused me and my mother. It's not like she let it, but she wasn't there to protect me. So she did end up catching him and beating on him, but it was too late. I was already out of body, doing the life review like TJ described, and making the decision. I was talking to a group of guides, high spiritual beings. They assumed a shape of a form to pacify the human part of myself that was confused unless it had some kind of concept to grab onto. I hadn't let go of the body completely. I was still a human spiritual hybrid, having, agreed to take a body. When the soul comes into the body, it's a symbiotic relationship. So I was in agreement with this body to maintain it, and I still haven't let go of that contract. So I decided to come back into the body. I was shown the timelines once again, but this is from a personal perspective, what would happen if I remained dead. And there were some very negative things that happened to my family if I remained dead. So I made a choice to come in, and it was kind of like what you said. You come back, you have to love everybody. I know at one point, several times, I was reminded of that promise that I'm here for everybody, because we're all pieces of the puzzle, and if you look at a puzzle, it's assembled, and there's one piece missing, the eye goes to the missing piece, and that's how it works. So we all get it. We have to get there. There's a way we can all get there. There is a win for all. I'll do one more thing. So there was the shipboard, the near-death experience, the life-death choice. I'll end with this. I was dealing with a reptilian when I was between 4 and 12, and I would have like a Groundhog Day episode with this reptilian, and it was male in energy, it came through a portal like on Stargate, where the horizon, where it looks like it's water that he's coming through like a portal and a Stargate, but there are no brackets. It was just an energy grid that was somehow projected when he came through it. And he was in a reptilian form. He had a hood. When I was a child, I was terrified, because at that point, I was pretty well anchored into being human and the reality that I was walking in the world in. And so we were having these, I perceived them as battles, that this reptilian was trying to pull me out of my third eye to brain chakra, and so I would be terrified and break free of him, and we had some telepathic communication going on there. And finally it stopped, the communication, or the contact stopped at 12 when I made a decision not to walk where this portal was. So I avoided that portal and I never went back. And later, upon reflecting on those episodes with the reptilian being, I realized that reptilians are, their communication, their telepathic vibratory frequency is somewhat different than other extraterrestrials. And it feels like you're going to die if you aren't able to communicate with them and meet them at their energy level. And so I've been adjusting. I haven't really had a major episode, but I think now that I've learned a lot more, I'm now 61 and a half years old, that I don't think this fellow was negative at all. I think it's just my perception, and that happens a lot with experiencers. They don't realize that the intention of the person, just like an animal that goes to a vet, sure that my cat is terrified of the vet, thinking that it's a monster from hell. But the vet just wants to do, help the animal. So, okay, I feel like I need a break from talking, so thank you for listening, and thank you, Karen and TJ, for giving me this chance to speak. And back to you, TJ.
Back to me again. It's a round 3. Okay, but actually a round 2. All right, folks, thank you for joining us tonight. Just to mention for everybody, we're getting close to the hour according to my live on air stream. We've got roughly 13 minutes to the hour, but we're working together. This is Lynn Hartrum, for those that already know Janet and TJ in the radio hosting business on the internet radio. Lynn Hartrum, Hartrum. You can find her on Facebook and with Free, and she is one of the coordinators, and she's going to tell us more about the free experiences as we go along. And Janet and I are members of that group, Free, which was sponsored. Our founding father, our director, I don't know all the legal details of the formation of Free, but I do know Dr. Edgar Mitchell, because I knew Edgar Mitchell before I knew any of this stuff about Free or anything. So I knew him from being an astronaut. And fortunately, Janet and I found this group through people we had on our radio shows together, and a lot of our friends that we were interviewing were talking about going up north with Kathy Martin and Denise Stone and Peter Robbins, Richard Dolan, various people like Stanton T. Friedman. I think even George Fowler may or may not have been there, but lots of people. And one of them going up was Ray Hernandez, I believe, or either John Polk, and they've both been on our radio show here on TJ Morris ET Radio as well as Aquarian Radio. And Janet and I are coming together for Experiencers Network in a web forum as websites, and Cosmos Radio.org is just another website that we can grow up to the cosmos and share all levels of our radio show networks and bring more associations in. So now I'll just try to share another part of me. Since I was born on January 26, 1951, and I'm presently at January 27, 1974. And the reason I have to do this chronologically is to ground and bring my energy down. So we think linear on this planet, and I'm not very good at that, at linear time. I'm sort of like Lynn in the respect that I believe everything's sort of happening at once in what we call quantum entanglement, and we have many of our parts that are all happening, and there's many parts of me, and I'm sure there's many parts of all of us, But what I've shared thus far, just for grounding linear purposes of chronological order, I'm using dates to help you put benchmarks on this timeline storytelling that we're creating today, that we're launching on October 1st, 2015, with the three of us and all those out there listening that are friends of ours, with the Experiencers Network, cosmosradio.org, and free with Lynn and Facebook social media volunteers that use their experiences and all work freely to put in content into social media on various places and stages of our lives together. So apparently we're going to keep doing this in what we call the Internet. And we have a cyberspace culture we're creating with extraterrestrials and various entities and various galactic locations of apparently ourselves. I like to think alien civilizations exist and we are all part. But I'm sure that everyone would appreciate it if I would get on with my story, so I'll go as long as my mind will let me, for I'm like Janet, we have to take breaks. So January 27th, 74, I'm coming back to life. I have to learn to talk again after I've had 4 babies, but the last one pretty much did me in. I had to make this agreement. So this is something we're going to look at, hopefully, in the future if we ever have our Stargate to the Cosmos conference, is get people comparing these benchmarks in their lives. And I'm now 64. I was 23 years old. So bear with me. The little girl, Allie Clark, or Theresa J. Morris, TJ, her family's living in Texas, and this is where all this is happening. My sister lives in Lubbock. Coincidence to the stories, but I realized 1951, So I invite all of y'all to look at the year I was born, and it has to do with ACE and the entertainment world and television. And I'm from the time I was born, I was working in television on KNOE TV with James Ano, and going there and dancing and all of that. And I'm seeing all these synchronicities in my life now that I'm 64, and thanks to Janet and the Ascension Center, which is a huge part of my life, because I got the Ascension word, which was from extraterrestrials. And when I was in, I'm going to go back to January 27, 74, learning to walk and talk again. I'd lost all my blood. I was very anemic. I had to have my parents, my grandmother that I've told you about from Esther Bolton, and come stay with me, and even my husband. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even walk for like 2.5 or 3 months. And I remember it was like having hepatitis again. This is the second time in my human form that I have been stripped of my bodily functions. For the first time with hepatitis. I didn't mention it, but I couldn't walk or talk. Some people know my story or read it on UFO Digest, where for months I couldn't walk or talk or anything. I had to lay in a hammock outside, and gradually you get your strength back, but it takes months to learn to walk and talk and have your bodily functions, what I'm saying, as a child. And the same thing happens again. So even my husband at that time, his name was Stephen Lee Parrish. He's now deceased. He's the one that worked at NASA for Chris Kraft, that hired him personally because of the Vietnam War, and he was a 1A and was going to Vietnam, and our high school class was coming back in body bags, and he had 5 scholarships because he was a great musician. He was really intelligent, and his father worked for Grumman, so he was able to get him an in at NASA. So it's not always what you know, but who you know, folks. But, okay, so you see me with a husband that's working at NASA. I have 4 children, and I can't walk, talk, eat, whatever. And I have relatives, mother, my grandmother, my husband's grandmother, rotating in and out of the house to take care of 4 children and myself, and that was in Houston, Texas. So when we get through that, and the grandmother that's now deceased from Little Rock, Arkansas, on my husband's side, said, you really need to write about this. I don't ever want you to forget all this, but I know that you don't believe like that. But she had some kind of star being in her, or some extraterrestrial, because she thought uniquely open-minded and different from my mother and grandmother that were very closed, very, they were all lived during the World War II and the fighting with Hitler and all of that. And all of them were Irish and Jewish background, and my family was Baptist. His was Presbyterian. But she told me, you've got to write a book someday. And I said, I can't write about it. She says, no, people need to know about this, what happened to you and what you saw. She knew the story. And she kept telling me, whenever my mother and grandmother were around and she would have a chance to sit with me, then she would want to encourage me. So she was the first one to encourage me into, I guess you'd think Little Rock, Hot Springs, Arkansas, the baths and the New Age type of stuff. But I just kept telling her, no, I couldn't. Okay, maybe someday. So that was when I heard about I was going to write a book, that I really had to write a book about all this that happened. So that goes, I raised my children, and all during the time of raising 4 daughters from 1974 up until I joined the United States government officially. Now, May 1967, during that year when I saw Sonny and Cher and all that, and before when we got married, okay, I had a lot of things happening, and I filled out a lot of government paperwork with Yvonne McCutcheon's, and it was in the local newspaper in Houston. I was going to Washington, D.C., and I still have that newspaper, believe it or not, where it says my name was Ginger Thurmond, went by Ginger at the time, and going to Washington, D.C. So that's my government connection from May 1967 when I first filled out my paperwork. Plus, I had to fill out classified clearance and all that stuff for NASA, because even if your husband works there and with the Apollo missions, I don't know how many he worked on, but because I'm not big on the history like I should be. But back then I was living it, so it wasn't about writing history. It was about living it. So I have all that government involvement with clearances, paperwork trail, going to Washington, yada, yada, and a lot of spacecraft are now overhead. I remember Sputnik as a child telling my parents about my family in space. Sputnik was the first connection, NASA connection, and saying, oh, yeah, I know about that. And my husband at NASA was sort of being chastised because my husband would have some of the guys want to talk to me because he'd say, oh, my wife's always believed in UFOs and had experiences, and he would tell them on the slide. So I had that, but this was inside government, so all this was kept classified. But some secret engineers that were working or whatever, and so we started meeting at certain houses, certain engineers, certain astronauts, things like that, talking secretly and having certain meetings. And then we hear about this guy. I guess he was from Illinois or Chicago or Waukegan. I don't know where he was, Wisconsin, somewhere. But anyway, it gets to be over in some part of Texas with a group called MUFON, which is Mutual UFO Network. And I don't know his name, but apparently I may or may not have met him as a young girl in my early teens, or no, it would have been at this time, 1974, in the 20s. No, it would have been 67 and 8 during NASA time till I had Gigi. So in there, I make all these government connections from people in my life, but it's a secret, right? You don't talk about it. So my life stays that way from 67 on, except I'm having UFO sightings. My children are having UFO sightings. We have them follow us all over. It didn't matter if we lived in Houston or we lived in Birmingham, Alabama, where we moved to try to get away from all that. My husband went to work at Rust Engineering, and they followed us there. So my children are having sightings with their other children, and we're racing over to the police department going, these UFOs are following us. Of course, they don't believe stuff like that, so you let it drop. My children are a little disgruntled about their life having that happen, but each one has their own experiences, and they don't talk about it, and they don't want to be reminded of them. Except one. Stephanie's okay with it, but Gigi and Lauren do not want to be reminded, and they had the most profound experiences at that time. So each person on their journey in my life that crosses my path has to have their own story and their own mind with their own experiences, and I don't force people to tell their stories. But where I'm at now is to let you know that, yes, somehow I wanted to be involved with the government. I was destined, if you want to say fate, whatever, husband working there, connections, Houston, however you want to say it. And I'm very interested in your thoughts because as I put my story together, I'm looking for the truth and the research in the synchronicities. And in this new group I'm forming with Janet and Lynn and all these other people as experiencers, I want to get to the bottom of all the levels and the truths and all the connections in this physical body and others. So where I move forward from that age with my children and trying to say, okay, we did, and everybody keep it hush-hush, I feel like I'm in a Men in Black movie story. I moved to Rochester, New York, and I'm working there with FPO New York box office. I start working in attorneys' offices and learning about stock and pensions and people and different groups, international things, and working for various attorneys. And we have a huge UFO sighting over Lake, is it Michigan or Rochester, where Richard Dolan lives, Rochester, New York. and that was about 83. I can't put my finger on the exact year, even though people wanted to track it and move on when they came to hear me in Hawaii later. But now I'm up in Rochester, New York, having a sighting of this huge bright light at the sun setting, and we could see the sun where it was, and it was red, and all that dot going down, and it's getting, sort of dusky. And we're all watching this huge light over Pondview Heights apartments where I lived, and my children were with me. We'd just gotten out of a Beamer. We'd gone and played video games, which is what you do with kids. We'd gone to the what do they call that up there? Six Flags in Rochester or something like that. And so we'd done all that, and we were coming in, and there it was. And there were people standing in the parking lot, and they were just standing looking up. So, of course, we're getting out of the car with kids. You're tired. You've been doing all this fun stuff, and you're getting out in shorts. It's summer, and you look up, and you go, and there it is. Now, I don't know when it was. I think roughly August. I don't know. And this huge bright light, real white there. Everybody's just stunned. Then we're all standing there, and it gets a little dark. It was like it was waiting until it was black or something, and it turns dark. And two huge red lights shoot out of the top like a cannon. Shunk. One shoots out sort of and stays there, and another one goes shunk, and it stands up there. So there's two red lights above this huge white light. And everybody's like, because we're watching. And then one shoots off one way towards over the lake, or the Michigan Lake, whatever it was. I think it's Michigan. And the other, it could be Superior, I don't remember, Rochester, New York, Buffalo area. And then the other one goes the other direction. And then everybody's still. And so I come to my senses, and everybody's just frozen. It's like something out of a Men in Black movie. They're just standing there gawking. And I just sort of shake my head and go, I'm going to go in. I mean, it felt like I was dazed. It's like I was like everybody else. But something brought me out of it. And I said, well, I'm going to go call 911 and see if anybody's reporting this, because this was sensational to me. It's seeing these two red lights shine. And I've had all these UFO experiences, and I had some connections, and I wanted to see if it was reported. So I ran into the apartment. It was a nice one, but it's staying there on the lake. And anyway, ran in, called them. They said, no, nobody's reported it. No, we haven't had anybody saying they're seeing lights in the sky, yada, yada. Okay, you sure? And I'm going, are you sure? I was very bold about it. Nobody's reported it. So then they're walking in the door and acting like nothing happened. And so they come in, my daughter said, who are you talking to, Mama? I said, I told you I was coming in reporting it to the police, to 911. And they said, what? And they didn't remember it. I'm like, you're kidding. I said, what happened? Everybody go in. And so I go look. I ran out, and then there was one lady that was laying on the ground with an ambulance there. So I went over to see what happened. And I don't know if she remembered what I didn't have a chance to talk about, because they were helping her, and I was just running across the asphalt. But something happened. They had to come get her in an ambulance. I remember that. And so that just became a marker again in my life. Okay, that's just one incident, but it was a very, very important one, because I got to see everybody doing it, and then I sort of shake it off and go in to call. And then my family comes in, and they're like, either they didn't want to talk about it, or they didn't remember it. And I couldn't get it. It was like they were dazed or not, or didn't know. I was like, what the heck? So that was my experience of something unique. But again, believe it or not, we never talked about it. Isn't that strange? We never talked about it all those years until later. I go into the Navy and go into the government and live in government housing, and my kids coming back, and they would go back with their dad in Florida that worked at the NASA over there in Florida, Canaveral, I think. I don't know what the name of it was. So he was down there, and I was up at Great Lakes, and they would come back and forth. And I go to Washington and have a polygraph and psych eval and lots of another polygraph, and meet a lot of people, including very tall people that don't look normal, coming and going in Navy uniforms, and find that very interesting, because I'm going, they look really tall. But so that's interesting, and I'm going, what year is this? So now I'm starting to go, okay, now this is 1987, and I wrote all this stuff down, because I'd filled out all this new paperwork as a rehire. I went in on a Wednesday and a Thursday, and the girls outside were saying, oh, you've worked for us because you're a rehire. And I don't remember any of this. I knew I'd fill out government paperwork, yada, yada. I worked for attorneys. But now I've been into the boot camp at Navy. I went to Orlando. I think it's torn down now. So I went in the Navy, and then I went to Lowry Air Force Base. I got training. I wore black and did Men in Black things. There's a lot of talk about Air Force and Alaska, things I didn't do. And then after I do some clearance stuff there, then they ship me from Lowry Air Force Base to Great Lakes. And they take me down the basement and say, you're going to get a DD-214, but this is the only copy you're ever going to get. You're never going to be out of the government, and we're going to give you this. And it was only 4 to 6 of us. So I was in a special elite group, and one of the guys was the son that his son wrote the president's speeches for President Reagan, okay? Now, during that period of time, I'm still scratching my head, but I remember now between after Rochester, I had gone to Houston, but back in Birmingham, I had started investigative services with James E. Posey while I was working in Birmingham and going to the University of Alabama and doing my psych and educating, learning a little bit about computers. And I did arson, fraud, and subrogation, so that's where I got my investigator's background because I really wanted to be an investigator after this life, okay? Remember people telling me, you need to write a book about your experience. So I'm really interested in death and dying and how we're here and UFOs and all that. And I wind up wanting to join the military so I could learn more about these ETs and things like that, okay? So I'm like, there's got to be something going on here. There's just more to life than what I know. So that's sort of how I get into the government. I get all cleared for doing all this kind of work and stuff. And I guess I need to stop there because I'm sort of out of breath. And, Janet, can you tell some more of yours? Because we're past the hour now. I guess I can come back from the government part where I just start getting into the good stuff.
You're doing great.
Can you add?
You want to do a little commercial break here and play one of your songs?
Okay.
TJ is a crazy life that she's done everything, including she's been a recording artist, and she has some songs that she has recorded that are pretty good. I like them a lot. Do you want to take a few-minute break?
Well,
and then we'll be back in like 3 minutes?
Okay. All right, folks, if you don't mind, because I need to go get some water, and normally I have some here, but I'm sort of rusty. I've only got 3 pulled up. Keep on the Sunny Side, Seven Bridges Road, and Unchained Melody, because I haven't loaded all my CDs back since we came back after the break.
I like Seven Bridges.
All right. Well, everybody, I'm going to be on mute for just a few minutes and go get some water. It's about 2 minutes and 59 seconds, and then I'll gather my thoughts because it takes a lot of brain power to live your life and condense it. It's very hard for me to do this story. Plus, Janet can tell you it's been like pulling teeth to get me to tell it. So it's sort of strange that I'm trying to tell you all the skinny version of it. Lynn, are you okay with this?
Sure.
Like
yeah, no, it's fabulous.
The short and skinny of 64 years of life.
In a few minutes.
I'll go ahead and play it.
And everybody take a break. We'll be back in a few. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let
1
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Aquarian Radio Network with TJ Mars ET Radio, Cosmos Radio Org, launching tonight on October 1st, 2015. We are doing the launch for Shift Happens with Miss Lynn Hartrum. Lynn is part of the Free Experiencer group, and we're doing Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation sponsoring our event tonight. No money's exchanged, folks, just for the record. But we are, because we're all, Lynn Hartrum, Janet Carol Lessin, and Theresa J. Morris have all filled out their survey for the research into extraterrestrial encounters. And we're sharing Experiencers Liberation Day today, based on October 1st. And some of you may remember a gentleman by the name of Ray Hernandez that came along and had some radio shows with Janet and I, at least two on this radio show, and probably at least one, maybe two with Janet on Aquarian Radio. So Janet and I have been partnering together in marketing and public relations as ambassadors of goodwill for ourselves and our husbands and our lifestyle with our Authors Club organization, and we have formed Ascension Center organization, which she and I have been holding and anchoring that energy since 1993, and we're all into cyberspace culture and the various universal levels of existence. And tonight we're discussing with Janet Carol Lessin of Aquarian Radio and Lynn Hartrum of Free Experiencers, and we're all social media volunteers, and we'd like to have you all tell your experiences, but we thought we would give you an idea of what it's like to be open and public to the world. We are live broadcasting tonight to the world. So, Janet Carol Lessin, would you like to give a little information of anything, or turn it over to Lynn for a few minutes, and then I'll finish.
Well, I wanted to, Lynn, if you had any questions or feedback, or even TJ, if we have questions or feedback on the three stories that we've shared so far, then I'll give you first dibs if you have any questions or feedback for either me or TJ.
Yeah, actually I do. I have a question about one of the experiences that I've had, and since you both have had some pretty significant near-death experiences, you might be able to help me out with this. I was a teenager. I want to say maybe 14, 15 years old, and I woke up one morning and I had the most vivid dream. I can still remember it like I just woke up from it. It was one of those that's just like burned into my brain. And what it was I was in this room, and it was kind of a dimly lit room, and there were quite a few people in there. And we were all sitting around waiting for something, and I didn't know what it was exactly. And I was kind of confused, trying to figure out what exactly was going on. And so I asked the person next to me, where are we? What's going on? And they said, well, we're in the waiting room. And I said, okay, well, what are we waiting for? And they said, well, this is what happens after you die. You come to this place, and then you wait for them to call you, or something like that, I think he said. And I was kind of like, okay, that's interesting. And then somebody else came over to me, and they were talking to me and telling me about this baby boy that I was supposed to have, and that I would name him Michael, and kind of talking to me about all of this stuff that hadn't happened. And so I was really confused, like, okay, what is going on here? And it was just a very bizarre dream, but it was so vivid. And I know now, later on down the road, I realized, a lot of our conscious experiences, and when I say conscious, I mean via consciousness, we remember as dreams. That's how we kind of break it to ourselves, I guess, let ourselves ease into it. So what are your thoughts on that? I've had other people tell me what they think it might have been, but what do you guys think about that?
TJ, you want to go
Janet,
first?
you want to go first? I was thinking the same thing. We do that a lot at ESP. The more you get to know people, it happens. Okay, I'll go first then, Janet. Yes, I believe that we're here in phenomenology as part of our being, in essence. And I, of course, am part of the parapsychology work and neuro work on the brain and the various levels of consciousness. I'm very not an expert on this. I'm a layman. But I do understand there's beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma, the 5, and my husband agrees with that, and I haven't even got into our story with him yet. But there's a lot of information that we're here to share, but he's not willing because he's more in the left brain logic, wartime man. We have yin and yang. But regarding your story, I have had many of those myself, and I've talked to a lot of people through the years that work with their own self. We're all into the self-realization, our self-help groups, and I've been with Spiritual World Network, and I had Psychic Network in Hawaii, where Janet is. But for years, I helped people. And we did counseling, and that's what Janet and her husband do now. But, yes, I've had many, many years to work with people such as myself through the years past in the journey, and many of it did go into out-of-body, near-death experiences, dreams, lucid dreams. I worked with a lot of psychologists in the Navy. I worked with psychiatrists and psychologists in the medical field because I became a hospital corpsman, and I always worked for the COXO. But we were always interested in people and their way of thinking and being. That's why we've had so many motivational speakers and people working with the psyche and the gifts and remote viewing and what all is available to us, because we spend so much of our time, we think, conscious in the alpha level. And, of course, you understand beta, alpha, theta. And we were at the time, 25 or 30 years ago, when I was in Hawaii, starting the Ascension Center and the Psychic Networks, we were helping people to understand. And I was working with a lot of people, teaching them how to deal with that part of their thought processing. And we were having many groups and seminars and meetings, and some of them were MUFON, and some were, believe it or not, with counselors and people that just came. We had open Sunday at various meetings in Hawaii, and we'd talk about things like this. So, yes, many of us were very curious as to why in our dream we could go into lucid dream, and lucid dreaming became a very big part of our various groups in our spiritual world, our spiritual community at that time, our metaphysical community, because they overlapped. We had a very strong metaphysical community and a very strong spiritual community on Oahu. And Janet was at some of those, too. We were walking the same circles, and we don't know that we've ever met. We try to remember. But I would tell you that many people do that. It is part of who we are. It is part of our conscious existence. I believe that life, it does exist after death. I do believe in reincarnation in past lives because of my upbringing and my history on the planet, because it's hard for me to understand linear time, and that's how I do it, as I separate me and many other places and dimensions and universes, because I happen to believe in many more universes and dimensions that we're allowed to believe in science or in quantum physics. But just to make it simple, yes, that is a part of you, and consciously I believe we can be in many places at one time, and that part of you was there with other people. Now, what I've experienced is as we go farther as star beings, as Brad Steiger and Nancy at one time wrote a book, star people do these things too. They understand dreams, lucid dreams, fate, the future, what will happen. Some of them are seers. We call them mystics, oracles, psychics, sages, seers, shaman, the angel, spirited, the keepers of the flame. We have various modalities. various ancient mystery schools, and we've taught them and kept them since 3114 before Christ on this planet. Now, we're supposed to be 16.4 billion years old on this particular planet. However, many of us believe that we have come here from Mu or from other universes to these galaxies and into this galaxy and into these planets. So all these parts of us are in our psyche. Now, some believe that it's all in our DNA molecular structure. And so some of us believe that we're getting the essence of who we've been, either if you want to say past, or you want to say future, or you want to say the now. And if we're experiencing all dimensions, all universes, all pieces of papers in a stack of 500 of Arima paper at one time, some part of us can apparently see through each piece of paper, while other parts of us can't, and we call that the veil. So when we're here on the planet, we're saying the veil's down. And fortunately, when we go to sleep at night and we rest our physical, we're doing beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma, but we're in the beta and we're going into our deeper sleep. Those are the times some part of us is resting, and they understand neurologically. They don't even understand how, when they put us to sleep and operate on us, I have talked with many anesthesiologists, and being in the medical and then working with as a hospital corpsman, but then also with my husband in the VA and a lot of people, and many anesthesiologists that we work with parapsychology. They don't understand. They know that they can put the body, the physical, to sleep, and they can't really be for sure they're putting your mind and your conscious to sleep, which is a spooky thought. And I've actually talked to people who have woken up from anesthesia while they're operating on them, and I've talked to Robert O'Connor, which is on our board of directors over in Phoenix in hypnotherapy, that said that he's had to put an 85-year-old woman, talk her down while they operated and took her breast off for cancer or something, because she was so old and on so many blood thinner and other things he couldn't put her under, and they called him. So he would be brought in on certain cases to put them under. But with your meeting other people, Lynn, I just think it...
Jay, let me interject. I just have 2 seconds. Sure. I want to add something to that, what you just said. My mother repeatedly would come out of open heart surgery, and she would be crying. We'd go, "What's going on, Mom?" She says, "I was awake the whole time. I felt everything."
Oh, my gosh. Who was that, Janet?
My mother.
Oh.
And that's why I don't want to
Bless
go
her
on
heart.
Because and my brother said the same thing. So something about our family, it really doesn't work.
Wow.
Interject.
And who can repeat? Yeah, none of us are experts, folks. Not one of us on the planet. I don't care who you talk to. So all we can do is be experiencers and share our personal experience. Now, we can try to learn from each other. This is a working-class planet, and we are educated here. And maybe that's why we do the physical. I don't know. I can't tell you. I do believe we're spiritual essences having this physical experience, but I believe we're body, mind, spirit sharing the birth, life, death process. Now, for what reasons? Can't tell you. The deeper meaning of life, I'm still looking for. So, we live and learn, right? They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But we're working on all of that, Lynn, and just many people have met each other in that, what you're talking about. Now, whether they want to believe in Bardo or purgatory or any of those things are just various words for a place we go. But since you were dreaming, you were obviously still alive, but you were dreaming some part of you that had been there, or were you experiencing it? So you'll have to just keep working on that, because it can mean different things to different parts of your mind in the different rooms where you store memories, which they can't tell you, any of us, where we're storing our memories. They think they know based on when they touch certain parts of our brain, when they pull back the brain, the skull, and operate on your brain, what part they're touching and what part of the physical body responds to that. That's just where they're at now. And you could know about fMRIs, right? So we're doing all that, but we're just at that. The mind is an uncharted territory, much like many of the ocean parts that we don't really know. We think we're mapping them, and we think we're mapping the brain. So it's called measuring, folks, and science is known for measuring, and we like to repeat things over and over from one person to another. So with this experiencer group, and with Lynn being here and Janet, we're all three, they say we're two or more gathered in his name, he is there also, meaning the all-omnipotent God source, or God. So we're hoping that as of today, October 1st, after this huge change on the planet, October 21st through the 28th, and we already went through the Ascension Age beginning on 12/21/12, opening the door in this new shift. And now, Lynn, did you come up with shift happens? Is that you're saying? Because I love it.
No, I can't take credit for that one. I think that might have been Karen.
I had to comment
on
Lynn's. Karen came with that. But let me comment a little bit on Lynn's question about her experience. I've been watching Medium with Patricia Arquette, and it's a rerun. You know, the show was on. I think it ended in 2010 or something like that, 2011. And last night was a very profound episode. She ran into a day where she was shot and her boss was shot and she was dead. And so suddenly she was back in time, and she was going back and forth through time. And I've had that happen too. And it's kind of disconcerting when it happens. And it was interesting watching Patricia Arquette, the lead character, who was a very psychic lady on the show, deal with being out of time and space and out of phase, and because time is not linear. You can access it, and so she was accessing it. And she was trying to explain it to the people in her past that she was going to be working for the DA in the future. I have had a similar thing happen with encountering where I was dead. And so I'm in the future, and I'm dead, and I'm looking back on how sweet this life was. And I find myself, welling up with tears and nostalgia, and it's like, wait, I'm here in time, and that hasn't even happened yet, even the episodes that I'm recalling. So it's very bizarre when you go out of phase, and I think people that are just in tune with it are aware that they can travel. I do a lot of lucid dreaming and astral projection. You get out of phase sometimes. So, just go back and be here now. Realize that was a possibility. A lot of the things on the show, whoever wrote that show is a genius. Those are possibilities. They're not set in stone. And so perhaps when you're being shown something about a future, that's an opportunity for you to either embrace it or accept it. Except that you want to make other changes. You want to go down a different path. And so you are always the chooser. Okay. Did you have any more other comments or questions for either of us or even on your own stuff? Back to you, Lynn.
I'm definitely mulling over what you were saying because it makes quite a bit of sense. And have you also experienced, when you're talking about kind of, going to potentially the future, have you experienced two different, I don't know if you would say dimensionals, or two different realities at the same time? Let me give you an example of what I'm trying to say. So the other day I was driving, and I was going around this kind of steep curve, and my car was going along the road just as it should have, but it felt like I was going sideways, sliding off the road, and like I was going to crash into something, but my car was going perfectly, around the curve just as it should have been. So it was almost like I was experiencing two different realities at the same time, one where, I slid off the road and perhaps crashed into something, and the other where it went straight. So have you guys ever experienced anything similar to that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you go first.
Well, just recently, because I covered this on the radio show, this was recently in this year, and many of the followers like Jane and John, a lot of them that come and go, including Tessa Dick tonight, she came and went. That's Philip K. Dick's wife. A lot of y'all remember Philip K. Dick, Minority Report, Total Recall, those things. But one night I shared on the radio show because I was like getting here, and a police officer almost hit a police officer coming my way, and I know I didn't pull over in front of him, but my car shifted, and I did exactly what you just described, and I told people that. I knew I was on the right side of the road. I just pulled out of Kenny Lunsford's garage where we had our car fixed. My husband was right behind me. I pulled out in the van and pulled straight out, but yet some part of me time phased or slammed over. It looked like our like you say, it was like in slow motion, but I felt like I was sliding off the road in front of him, and he was looking right at me. He turned around, came back, put his lights on, and got behind me and stopped, and took my insurance and my ID and all that. I had to wait until all that stuff. He was fortunately I didn't have anything, for him to pick me up for or anything, and he knew I didn't mean it, but he said that's not the kind of way I want to start my shift. He was going in around 4:00. So yeah, exact what you just described happened to me, enough that I had to make it so to have a 3D reality of having a police officer almost hit me head on, stop in front of my husband behind me in the car, because I was in the van, or in the truck at the time, sitting behind me, watching me talk to a police officer. And he didn't even know what I did. He didn't see it. And my husband was the car right behind me and did not see that. But I saw it all, and so did the police officer. But nobody else knew what happened. It's strange.
It is interesting.
Not even the man behind me.
Yeah, I've had similar things, too, where I know there was nothing there. There was nobody coming. It was absolutely positively clear. I get on the road, and there's somebody right on my ass, and it's like, wait, they weren't there. How can somebody be? I turned. It's like they weren't there. How are they there? And it was a clear shot. You could see a mile or two down the road. It was just really, really, really bizarre. That happened a couple times. And then I watched a series of YouTubes. And, there's all these cameras all over the world now and all in the cities. And they show episode after episode of these cars that are just, they're not there. And all of a sudden they're there. And sometimes they barely miss people. And sometimes they hit people. And they're going, what the heck happened? But they were not there. So something is going on with the planet that we are out of phase, and that's probably what's part of the ascension process.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, a lot of people have talked about that they've had kind of weird disturbances with time and stuff as well. And I think my kind of take on all of it, from all of the people that I've talked to, it's almost as if we're all learning to exist in a multidimensional state. It's like a slow learning process for us to be able to realize our existence in many different dimensions and realities. And that's what makes the most sense to me. I don't know what you guys think about that or not.
Well, I call it phenomenology and the science of phenomenon, which is distinct from the nature of being. And I've only arrived at that state since I've been doing this radio show, because I'm searching for words and epistemology and ways to describe what it is we're creating together, because I'm very much an investigator and a researcher, and I've been called a scientist by Robert Morningstar coming on the show and telling people what a great scientist I am because some of the papers I've written. And that was just a part of me I went through when I did understand it, but it was like art. And I would like to ask you this, Lynn. Have you ever had a part of it, and I hope that you will join our group for phenomenology with ERICOP, which is Education Research Association, but we're a community online practicing skills, which is just another name for a group of people like on Facebook. All these groups are springing up, but we do anomalist and anomalies, and we have artifact people and all that stuff. But phenomenology and the structure of our consciousness very much is interesting me. And, of course, I study parapsychology, and we have it in metaphysical arts. But experience in the first-person point of view, and yet the central structure of our experience has to do with our intentionality to some people and our perception to others. So maybe we have our intention and our focus in one place, which is what many of your psychiatrists and your brainiacs and your intellectuals will tell you, because they'll find everything other than what you think it is to be the truth for findings of fact. But being that I'm an investigator and I have to deal with all these death and dying, and I've been expert witness in cases, I have to be directed towards something that is factual. And yet sometimes our experiences are not about experiencing the same thing. Ergo, well, for instance, a police officer arrives on a scene and he asks 3 different people, where were you, what happened, where were you standing, and then the other person, what did you see, what happened? And you get all these people, and they were all there, but they all saw something different. So there's always a central structure of the experience at the time. But focus, intentionality, and perception, we have learned, directs the energy towards something that we think is possible. And many of us call it the truth in my line of work as an investigator. And we think it's a discipline of phenomenology, but we can't prove it. So finding a fact is the difference between science and theology, and we're trying to take something that we can measure. Unfortunately, much of this stuff that we're talking about tonight in the past was not measured. And so you brought up some very interesting stuff that we discuss in metaphysics and parapsychology. And so I'm trying to put it under a new hat called phenomenology. And Janet and I have been working with the alien ET UFO community, and now we have this whole new experiencer thing popping out of the nuts and bolts of the UFO community, which was Mutual UFO Network. But thanks to Kathy Martin and Denise Stoner and I guess Mary Sutherland and Dr. Edgar Mitchell and I guess Ray Hernandez is in there. Would you like to mention any other names in this part of the show regarding people you may know that are discussing things other than UFOs and extraterrestrials under phenomenology with experiencers?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Before I got involved with the whole ET UFO kind of community, I was very involved in the metaphysical world, so that's very familiar to me. But one person that I really, really want to mention is Mary Rodwell. She's also one of the co-founders of FREE, and she is a counselor and hypnotherapist in Australia. She works quite a bit with a lot of children who have had ET experiences, people who channel, star languages, writing, symbols, all of that. And she's very much in tune with consciousness and how it relates to kind of our physical world around us. And that's one thing that I really, really love about FREE is that, especially on the research side of it, they're looking at all different aspects of this this whole situation. They're looking at, okay, what are the ET encounters like? What types of beings are they seeing? When do these encounters happen? What time of day? What state of consciousness are you in? Were you dreaming? Were you meditating? Were you fully, awake and conscious? And I think that is the key right there, is consciousness. It all seems to boil down to our consciousness and how we view the world around us. And it's a very gray area, and it's exactly I love that you call it phenomenology. I think that's a great description of it, because there aren't really any words to describe it. It's very difficult to describe these kind of bizarre situations that we all find ourselves in quite frequently, it seems, at this point. But back to your question, yeah, Mary Rodwell is definitely one that I don't want to forget. And Dr. Rudy Shield, he is a physicist. He works at Harvard, and he's actually the executive director for FREE now. And he's done a lot of work with black holes and consciousness and, just super way beyond me, super intelligent. But they're all amazing. I mean, I'm really, really honored to be, associated even with everyone involved with FREE.
That's a wonderful thing. And Janet and I all have our different associations we've tried to back and get to have one huge conference, and we're still working towards that goal. But Janet's focusing on experiencers with us tonight, folks, and it was her that brought this to us, our attention again, with Ray Hernandez FREE and the TJ Morris ET Radio. And I want to give Janet all that, and Aquarian Radio, all that, kudos for that, for reminding me, even though Ray Hernandez couldn't be with us tonight due to his own family and problems there. But we all have conscious thoughts. I do follow consciousness. Phenomenology is the word I'm giving to that as an approach to psychology. It's not psychology. It's not philosophy, but it's somewhere in between, and there's many authors that commonly refer that it has a family resemblance to significant differences with psychology and philosophy and the things that we're trying to define that aren't yet defined, paradoxically, right? And so that goes with our theme for the new ascension age, this time after 12/21/12. It goes with our free experiences. It goes with various people that have had ET or UFO phenomenon happen in their lives in the alien ET UFO community, because we have so many authors, we have ufologists, we have exopoliticians, we have contactees, abductees, experiencers, people of various communities of different structures, disciplines, practices, and we're looking for those threads of reflection to study in structures of consciousness, which is part of the phenomena that appears to act with us in truth as consciousness. But there's ontology, the study of reality, and we're studying ontology in our metaphysical groups. So we welcome everybody, regardless of your philosophy in life. If you've developed one, your educational level, the fact that you exist is evidence that you have intuition, empathy, and feelings. And we study various groups and various people. So I want you to know that I don't speak for every human, but uniquely tonight I could say that I believe that these three women are open-minded. What would you say, Janet? Back to you, Janet.
Back to me. Well, I just wanted to let everybody know that Ray is very sorry that he can't be here tonight. He had a family emergency, illness in the family, and so he's dealing with people in and out of hospitals. So he couldn't make it today, and he really feels bad about it because this was his baby. This was his idea. And I was there at the UFO Congress in February in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he was announcing it for the first time in public, and he had all these buttons, and he was just so excited about October 1st, 2015. And, of course, as we all know, stuff happens when you're busy making plans. Same with Karen Christine Patrick. She had full intention of being here. She made a banner. She came up with the shift happens. And I think that's so apropos for what happened to her, because shift happened, and she had an option to move over to work with the other NASA astronaut. I'm drawing a blank. She's going to be doing a book with him. He's got all these NASA photos.
Ken something?
What was his name?
Was it Ken something? Kevin? I'm drawing a blank now, too.
Sorry. Having a brain fade farts right now. Anyway, Ken was on our show a couple weeks ago. Here, I probably could pull it right up. And so she and her beloved and her beloved Brett's daughter are in a truck going across the earth right now, driving to New Mexico, where they're going to work with, what's his name? Ken. Okay, one more chance. Anyway, Dr. R. Ken Johnston, who has the NASA photos, and he's one of the people behind Mike Barra and Richard Hoagland, and he's been providing these incredible NASA photos for years. And so he's coming out with a book, and so they're working on probably making it like a coffee table version, so it's large enough to see the details of the anomalies on the moon, which is all these things are coming out. They're all part of disclosure, and so are these experiences by experiencers. TJ, did you get anybody in your chat that wants to come on and share? So we might have some other stories beside our own.
No. Tessa and a lot of them are going to listen on the archive, and John's still here, but I don't know if we bored them to tears or they're going to come back and listen to the archive, but in answer, no. I can finish the last part where I bring Tom into my story, if you want me to cover my experience with Tom.
I think that would be good. We don't have a lot of time left, and I think your part of your story with Tom is so important for, I told you that you're sitting on the story. It's like Roswell. Ha, ha, ha. So please share what you will about your Roswell-type experiences. Take it away, TJ Morris.
Thank you. Okay, this is another, I can't possibly tell everybody everything that's ever happened in my life, as everybody knows, trying to tell your own story in less than 2 hours, which you only got a part of the show to do. But being that I've never put it as much as I'm doing tonight in one story, this is going to be the closest that Lynn or Janet will ever get out of me probably in this lifetime. But at least we'll have a recording of the tidbits with Janet's story and Lynn's. So we're making history tonight, folks. We're setting the theme and the storyline for Ray and October 1st and Free and experiencers world over at this particular time we call Being in the Now. But being in the now, we have stories of past, present, future because, as I mentioned, we have a linear timeline that we all seem to gravitate to. Ergo, think of this as 1st through 12th grade, and then we go into maybe getting associates to your master. A bachelor's and associate, a bachelor's a 4-year and a master's at 6 and a PhD at 12 possibly, somewhere in there, just give or take basically. So people understand that, on this planet we want you to continue your education. And we're always under education and entertainment. So Janet's under education and my show tonight's entertainment. We cover both categories, entertainment and education. In the past we've covered categories of paranormal and spirituality, but they seem to get a low totem pole if not even handled anymore, so we're going under broader terms to get more people visible to us. And having said that, I told you I'd gone to Washington and basically got involved with the government in and out of uniform, which a lot of people don't understand. I was not only in the military uniform with the United States Navy, but I was accepted through Office of Personnel Management, which we call OPM, as a civilian, which Janet was. She was a civilian, so she worked with a contractor. And there can be contractors, and you can still be subject to rules. And these days they call it an SF-312 under a type of forms. SF is standard form in the government, but that is for your clearance, at least starting, I believe, for a contractor. But inside you have various things of various levels of clearance levels, confidential, secret, top secret, and then you go on above that with various need-to-know information based on the project or whatever you're working on, and they'll assign it different levels and numbers and code names. And without those, it's almost, we have cryptologic, we have cryptos that work in certain buildings, and they only work maybe with certain code-breaking groups. And then there's the Central Intelligence Agency, there's the National Security Agency, NSA, and these are the National Security Council, and we have all these other things, and we have Homeland Security and Federal Bureau of Investigation and drug enforcement agencies. All these are security counseling and have to do with protecting our country under the cap we call national security. Okay, that's for our own United States of America, which we're broadcasting live to you today here, and none of us have anything to do with that anymore, just so you know. This is strictly for entertainment and educational purposes of 3 women trying to market and promote something free of our time as volunteers for various organizations that we work together in social media on Facebook, okay? So with me telling my story, I'm blending it more so than Lynn or Janet, I guess, because maybe I'm older, had a longer life. I don't know, but these ladies are being very generous to give me the floor. And hopefully Lynn will come back and do this again. So maybe we can do this once a month maybe. But in the meantime, until we get Lynn and Janet back with us, I'll tell you that when I met my husband, it was prearranged. Now, what would be fun with the group that we should do under phenomenology is I've done the UFO thing. I've seen the UFOs. I know they exist. I've seen the ETs. I know they exist. I've worked with lots of people that think they're from different planets or different galaxies or told their stories on Oprah or on radios or on YouTube. And that doesn't fascinate me. What fascinates me is the phenomenology of the consciousness that we all share that's forthcoming in the future that may have already been experienced in the past that we are recreating again in this now moment. And some of us stay silent, some of us are extradimensional, some of us are universal, and some of us are multi-universal. And many of us believe at various levels, just like I mentioned, elementary through high school, maybe you have an associate's, master's. The reason I brought that out to a PhD and then on, is we never stop learning. That is one thing I have learned. Consciousness goes on forever. I believe it's eternal, it's omnipresent, and there is a macrocosm of consciousness that is the all I am, and that is a personal philosophy or a conscious or belief system or hope. Depends. We have all these levels in these emotional levels I've learned, and some extraterrestrials I met, and through my husband has given me a lot. Yes.
Tell your story. You're doing too much side stuff, and we're running out of time. Tell your story.
All right. I met Tom in 1994 for the second time. Now, Janet, you know I can't go into the original. You know some stuff. But let's just start with 1994, Janet, okay? We're going to skip from 87 to 1994. Now, Tom and I was over in Fort Hood, and I had been shipped from Hawaii, and I'm skipping over some beautiful stuff that happened with UFO sightings and working in Hawaii from 1987 with the Navy till 1984, which, by the way, is where a lot of spies hang out and have conferences in Hawaii where Janet is. So we're going to skip over that because it gets too complicated with the clearance stuff. So I'm shipped over to meet a person, and I meet a tall man in black, and I am told to go under. I take a pill, and I go to sleep, and I wake up. And this picture is shown on I won't go into all the details that Janet knows about, but in a longer story maybe someday. But I see the picture, and I say, oh, really? He's about clearances and classified and all this stuff. Really? I said, oh, really? And they're like, yeah. So they convinced me that this person in a uniform, which happened to be, later on I found out, the man I'm now married to, between the extraterrestrials and the government, and I'm not sure, but one gentleman had 3 digits, and then later on working with my husband, I realized that the people he was working with and I can't say in the government but off planet, because now, as of today, Janet, I'm going to talk freely, right? But in honor of Lynn and the fact that we're making this, because normally I don't talk all these, even the details I'm going to tell you. But in my mind's eye, the reason I'm interested in the story with my husband and the government and the word phenomenology is the fact that I'm interested in how can all of this be happening in one lifetime. And I'm not talking about UFO sightings. I'm not talking about meeting ETs. I'm not talking about working with the government. And I'm not talking about dying and having children and coming back or meeting personages off the planet. I'm talking about meeting a human that has similar stories, working with the similar people on and off planet with something similar to what Lynn said. Have you ever experienced this in a dream? Yes. With other people? Yes. Have you ever experienced a shift in time maybe, or a dimension where you've been with a car and maybe it slides over? Yes. So what I'm interested in is meeting people like Lynn, like Janet, and this is what I'm proving because I've manifested this or invoked this just like Lynn did for her, Janet did for her. Well, talking to extraterrestrials, and when President Clinton came to Hawaii, so I have to go back and backtrack that to give you that piece, I talked to the extraterrestrials off planet. I stayed on a little island right outside while President Clinton and Hillary Clinton was in the Hilton. I had a big mansion in Kahala, just a few doors down with Secret Service all around me. But I went and talked to an ET. And I talked to, it was a woman, and she was the head of the Allied Council, the Supreme Allied Council. Now, because I can't say these names, I was a commander, and I had all this stuff from when I was a child. So now all the story comes together as to who I am, and I've been praying. So I totally believe in prayers. And I had already gone through people synergistically involved in Hawaii and learned how to talk to the extraterrestrials, God, if you will, God Mother. And these are the people that I was praying to make all this happen, to get this clear in my head so I could meet my husband. I dreamed it. He was coming in visions. I had to meet this man. It was driving me crazy. It was like a lust, excuse me, folks that are sensitive to love and lust, but I lusted for this gentleman I'd never met that was in my dreams. I could see him while I was in boot camp in the Navy. I could see him when I was going through boot camp at night. I had visions. And it was driving me literally, it's like my soulmate and my twin flame, if we say in the metaphysical world. But I had to do this. So while the Clintons were there in Hawaii, I asked to meet him, and I did. And the Secret Service walked by my Cadillac and all that, and they said, you can't go over here, you can't do that. And then I went somewhere that I don't remember where I went. But I do know that I had this extraterrestrial experience, and the council and all met, and I guess, I don't know if the president was a part of that or not, because I cannot remember. But I remember that happening. I know they came to Hawaii. Janet has done a little research for me on one time, because what it is I'm trying to put together reality that has happened on this planet in my story and how it affects other humans on this planet. My husband has been off planet. I met him for a reason. Extraterrestrials put us together, and the government put us together. And he and I both worked for the government. Now, my question is, what's really going on? I met Janet. Janet and I was a part of Stargate. Now, I know this. Janet and I were brought to Hawaii as government contractors to work on Project Stargate, which was remote viewing and learning to do simple things to teach metaphysics and to do what we're doing now in radio. I strongly believe that. I have never said that until today. Janet and I are part of some program that's been preordained or preset to today's date to do exactly what we're doing. It is part of eye-opening awakening in this shift in the Ascension Age, and Thomas R. Morris, commander, he did off-planet work. It has been documented in my mind, but as to what we can prove to everybody out there with what Janet calls the Roswell information, such as Jesse Marcel Jr., Jesse Marcel III, he's a part of our story. And we're just going to have to piece it together. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to do something like this again and start getting people in one group and see if they'll let us meet. I don't know that the government will let us do that, Janet, but I would love to get us all in the same room before my husband passes, and let's talk, and let's find out who's got what piece of the puzzle and why. Because my husband's story and mine meeting on Earth, in our dreams, in other places, and mine doesn't match his many parts because he is not a spiritual person. He's never died. His grandfather was a preacher. They went to church, and they was a preacher's son, and they starved to death in these little bitty places here in Kentucky with little bitty churches. And we go to church, and we'll go to church this Sunday. It'll be a little New Hope church with just people that are non-denominational, and so we go to church. But it doesn't have anything to do with UFOs because these people don't believe in UFOs. They only believe in the apocalypse and the Bible and the way that most of us were brought up in the Christian faith, okay? That has something to do with it, and I'm trying to find what death and dying and spirituality and soul has to do with UFOs, extraterrestrials, the government, and people like Lynn and Janet and me and all of us. And my husband has a big piece of the puzzle because he's been a commander, and his part was weaponry. Mine is communication. And we were meant to meet, and obviously to tell this story today, Janet. So I can't give you all the details yet because there's not enough time, Janet. So last 3 minutes, Janet, go back to you and Lynn to close this out. So we can do this some more in the future, Janet. You've been working on it 3 years. Why stop now?
Of course, yes. And
Janet?
thank you for letting me connect to TJ, I love and adore you, and sometimes you go circular, and I think it's because the information is coming out that's in behind the program, and you're getting really good at controlling the programming and allowing yourself to express it. But you go circular for a while. It's like, just tell the story. And I've seen TJ go for an hour and nothing comes out but circular logic. So
the program.
That's okay.
So
and we got
deep program to keep me from talking. I do believe that.
Yeah.
Don't you? That's what you're referring to. It's hard to override.
Yes. Part of the program that the government puts in. Okay, it's 57. We have a couple more minutes. Back to you, Lynn, for your goodbyes and how do people reach you, and then
okay.
give us.
We'll do it again, Lynn.
Absolutely. I would love to do it again. Absolutely. If people want to reach me, they can find me either on Facebook. You can find me, Lynn Hartrum, or I'm one of the admins on the free Facebook page as well. So I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook. If you're interested in the peer support program or you want to just email me, that email is experiencerbuddy, B as in boy, U as in dog, DY, @gmail.com. And that'll come right to me as well. And I really appreciate being on here tonight. I've enjoyed the conversation immensely, and I absolutely would love to do it again.
Wonderful.
You.
Well, this is a way for us to start. Janet, you've done a great job putting the three of us together. And you get all the credit, super. Janet.
Okay. And I'm Janet Lessin, and my website is aquarianradio.com, and I got a lot of stuff there for you. Experiencersnetwork.com. If you do contact us, TJ, final words to take it away.
All right, folks, we appreciate you coming. Look at our cosmosradio.org where Janet's picture and mine's there. We're going to do more, hopefully get Lynn Hartman involved with cosmosradio.org to do more of these shows where we can all talk and do more of this experiencing with Janet Lessin and Theresa J. Morris, which, you know, we started this 3 years ago. So, Janet, you and I will try to get, I know people love our story and they can't get enough, but we never seem to get to it. So hopefully we'll still share people, interview people, and get Lynn involved, and let us know, folks. And, Janet, why don't you book us something together for More Experiencers Network, and we'll do this once every month or something. That won't tax Lynn too much, or every 2 weeks. Lynn, just let Janet know when you can do this again, and we'll simulcast, okay?
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. Love and blessings, and aloha, everybody.
Okay, good night. Thank you, Janet. Appreciate it. Good night, Lynn.
Good night. Thank you.
And I'll play the music.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive #1, #2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie, it's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year! Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.